Hello, Miata Internet people. My name is Keith Tanner. I'm here from Flyin Miata. And today I'm going to be giving you an update on a project that we've been working on. I've been working on sort of on the side. And we've done a couple of videos on this in the past, showing the concept, showing it in a car, showing some prototypes. And now I'm going to show you sort of the latest level that we've reached in terms of prototypes, in terms of stuff that's getting closer and closer to production ready as we refine both the actual products and the concept. So this started off as an attempt to take over Miata dash cluster, basically. I did a bunch of things to control the needles. I did some things that involved, I had some LEDs, so I threw some LEDs behind the cluster and started playing with it and trying to find out how it worked in a car. And discovered that really the interesting thing was the LEDs. And so we've started moving in that direction a little bit further. So I'm going to walk through what we've figured out here, what we've got going on. If you have any questions, please do put them in the comments and I will try to address them live. If you're watching this in the future on YouTube, then obviously that's not going to be possible with our current level of technology, so we will just answer them in the comments. So the general idea is to come up with a augmented factory dashboard. That's probably the best way to put it. You've got a dashboard that already shows you a bunch of good information on here, but wouldn't it be nice to be able to show more on this, such as a boost level or AFR or warning lights and things, without having to stick a full-on digital dash in your cluster, because it always looks terrible. They're always generic. They're not necessarily designed for readability under normal usage or for lighting under normal usage. So the goal of this particular project is to come up with a way to basically take a stock cluster and just make it work a little better. Or if you've got an engine swap, like I did on the car I started building this for, and you don't have things like a mechanical speedometer drive, or you want to be able to scale the RPM or something on those lines, it gives some of that capability as well. So the fundamental thing we're looking for is just basically adding lights, adding LEDs behind here that will react to whatever the car is going. And this current version is designed to work with a stock cluster. So you don't need a GM ECU like my original implementation. You don't need a mega squirting like that. If it can run the stock cluster, it can run these lights. So I'll show you the bits and pieces, then I'll put it together and give you a demo, because that's when it gets interesting. So first thing, these are designed to use a generic, not generic, a commodity off-the-shelf microprocessor. We're using the Feather family from Adafruit. And the reason we're doing that is because Adafruit supports their stuff extremely well. This particular one, this is a $12 board running a processor from a Raspberry Pi Pico. But whatever, the important thing is that Adafruit takes care of the hard stuff, which is care and feeding of the processor, inputs, outputs, programming, that sort of thing. And so if there's a chip shortage, say if all of a sudden you can't get RP2040 chips anymore, you can go to a different chip, an M4, an M0, whatever, and our product will be agnostic for that. So you won't have to worry about, this is the sort of thing we run into on doing this, chip supplies for some unusual chip becoming unavailable, and all of a sudden you can't use the thing anymore. So this is a sort of a standardized footprint that we're adopting for it. So there's two parts to this. The first part is this, which is a hand-built prototype that you didn't see last time it was here. It's a little more complex than it needs to be, but this is basically the LED driver. This plugs into one of these, not this one, but it plugs into one of these and allows you to drive the LED array in the dashboard running just this. So if you had a car that was running a Megasquirt or something that communicate with CAN, you can buy a version of a Feather that runs CAN, or that can read CAN, and then you plug this into it, and all of a sudden you've got control over the LEDs. The second part is, this is a little bigger than I'm hoping the final production will be, but again, this is hand soldered. This is the input-output board, the I/O board for a stock cluster. So the idea is that this thing plugs into inputs on the back of the stock cluster, reads them, turns them into digital form, into forms that the Feather can use, and that means you've got the information that's being sent to the ECU, or sent to the cluster in your little processor, and you can do stuff with it. The nice thing about these is these are also extendable as well, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm literally going to plug this together, put these parts in one at a time. Boop, there we go. And that's our entire unit right now. Like I said, I'm hoping to shrink it a little bit. It might be a little bit smaller. It'll be probably a multiple of 3 of this thing, but even if we only get this small, it's pretty good. So I'll plug in my outputs. That's my LED board right there. And oops, you're sitting on top of your own wires there. Don't do that. Oop, there we go. Plug in the two connectors for the I/O board. And what these are reading off, I'll show you this in just a moment once I get this plugged in. There we go. Travis, you might have to come around the side here. I've got this wired up to sort of emulate a car. But this is an example of how we're pulling information off the circuit board. Mazda used these screws to connect the gauges to the circuit board on the back of the cluster, and we can just simply tap it by putting a ring terminal on that. So this is how this particular cluster is being driven like it's in a car. That's what all the various clips are for. But it's actually pulling its information and its power and driving the whole little gauge cluster controller via those taps. So there's two things going on here. One is we're making the cluster think it's in a car, and two, we're reading what's going on in the car. So let's fire it up. We should get a nice little light show here. Whoop. There we go. Did you get that in time, Travis? Now this is a non-standard gauge face here. You see it starting off, it shows the red line, and it's pretending it's hot and it's warming up. That's what those blue lights going away are. As it starts to get warm again, you'll see orange lights coming up saying, hey, this red line is changing, you should cool down. This is just examples of things we can do with these things. I mean, this was just an example of what something like that can look like. You can use it for an overheat protection, which is what that just was. I'll replay this later. Or you could use it for showing boost level or whatever. The important thing is we have control over these gauges. So let's see, I will turn on the RPM. I am driving the tach needle with a signal, but it's a little bit, I can't quite emulate the tach signal, so it's lagging a little bit behind. But you can see right now I'm using the LEDs to sort of augment the tachometer. Well, it doesn't want to go any higher, but. And this can be whatever color you want to. You can't see it very well on camera, but these are getting brighter as they go. I've got different implementations of this, but it's showing that basically we've got this full range of LEDs we can use. And what if, oh, there's a shift light for you. And I've got a lag on there, so you can see if you shift, you can see where you shifted, a little bug following it around. Yeah, that poor little needle's having trouble. The signal's not quite perfect for a stock tach, but what can you do? So that's kind of a neat thing. We could also use those LEDs to show off boost level, for example. I'll talk about that in a moment. I've also got this one paying attention to the vehicle speed. And for that one, it's actually changing the needle color. So we have independent control of the needle color and the tachometer needles as to what's going on. And as I showed off earlier, if I get to that shift light, the needle changes color to something else. So, whoop, shift, okay, there we go. And we'll slow the car down a little bit, the needle. In this case, I just needed some way to show that I was reading the speed signal. You don't need to change the needle color, but it's kind of neat that we can do stuff with the needle to let you know about things as well as show you the LEDs. And the backlighting is controllable as well. We have full RGB control of our backlight, but it won't show up in this environment. So if we wanted to, let me just cool things down a little bit here. So the interesting thing is going to be, what can we do with this? We're going to be releasing the code for this open source, and we really want to see what other people do with it, because, I mean, this is just a set of LEDs. And we'll have some available for at least the MB speedometer as well. I'm going to see if we can package it around an NA speedometer, because we know that you want to keep your odometer in that case. But this is the general concept, is basically a standalone peripheral for one of these small controllers that we can use to expand to do anything. These little controllers have an expansion port on them that you can plug in different sensors. So you could put in, I have light sensor on mine to dim these automatically. I have a G sensor on mine that shows you the direction, the amount of lateral and forward acceleration going on. It displays it on one of my LED rings. You can input a 0 to 5 map signal into this thing, from a standard GM 3-bar map sensor. That will give you boost information, so you could show boost on here. You could put in the 0 to 5 volt input out of a wideband O2 sensor, and you could have some sort of AFR display on here as well. Of course, you don't need to use the full ring. You can use individual LEDs. You can have LEDs just moving. You can have it flashing when, say, you overboost, or if AFRs get out of range, under boost, for example. Once you get that information into the controller, you can do interesting stuff with it and display it. So we're really looking forward to seeing what people can do with the display. So this is just an update. I've demonstrated this before. If you look at some of our previous videos, you'll get to hear a V8 Miata rumbling away, showing the lights going around, and some of the different implementations I did on this. I just wanted to give an update on how this is going. We're still a few months out because we have to get the circuit boards actually produced. I'm in the middle of designing the circuit board for the I/O, an actual productionable circuit board, because obviously we're not going to be hand soldering these things. I'm in the middle of designing that, and then it's just a matter of getting some production done. I'll show you what this looks like. We do have, this is what the actual LED sitting behind the gauges look like here. You can see there's a ring of 40 LEDs around the outside. Those 4 in the middle control the needle color, and then the pieces of tape are hiding the ones that fire backwards for the backlighting. So this has been designed. Our friend Nolan did the design work on that one, and then it's just a matter of getting the rest of it done and then releasing out there and seeing what the open source community can do with interesting ideas. Once you've got ability to control your needle colors and add those LEDs, what can you do with it? And if you want to control the needles as well, that's actually a fairly easy addition. There's an off-the-shelf expansion board for these feathers that can run motors, and that will let you run the needles to whatever you want to, whether you want to rescale this, rescale either one of those because you're running a Honda, or if you're running one of the V6 conversions and you need to change your tachometer, you can do that as well with a little bit of coding. That's how the ones in my V8 car are working. They're running the needles themselves. So the idea is to make this as expandable as possible. And we will try to give you sort of all-in-one, ready to plug and play units. But I think what's going to happen, based on the sheer variety of questions we've had about these things, is that we're going to see a lot of different requests. Do we have any questions going on over here?
Yes.
We do have questions. Mike, what are the questions?
What models will this be applicable to?
The question is, what models will this be applicable to? At the moment, it's NA and NB, mostly because that's what I have at home, and this started off as a personal project. I haven't been inside an NC and ND cluster enough yet to know them the way I know these. The ND one we can drive off CAN, obviously. The NC one has a certain amount of CAN, so it's a little bit easier. You don't need that I/O board. I certainly will investigate those as we get through this system, but it will start off with the NA and the NB.
How much?
How much? Yes, it will cost money. It will not cost as much as a full-on race dash. I mean, the controllers themselves, like I said, this is a $12 controller. We don't have prices on the I/O boards yet. We don't have prices on the LED boards yet because we're still fairly early on. We will keep it as affordable as possible because I want people doing this. It will not be $1,000. It will not be free. So somewhere, there's your range. So between $0 and $1,000. Any more questions, Mike?
Can you showcase the different driving modes, like switching back and forth?
Okay, the question is, can I showcase the different driving modes? And for that, I'm going to send you back to our previous video, which was only released a couple of weeks ago. That shows it in a car, and that shows my prototype in a car. It's got a different LED array. It's a very hand-built setup. But that one does have different driving modes. There are no pre-programmed driving modes in this one, and I don't actually have an interface for it to turn it on and off. Basically, whatever you want those LEDs to do. I've got one where, as the tachometer moves, it leaves a trail. So that the LEDs follow the tachometer. The faster it moves, the longer the trail, and the trail disappears. And what that does is it basically, if you're just driving on the highway, you don't end up with a whole bunch of LEDs staring you in the face. It just shows you where you are right now, and then as you're changing, kind of like that little dot follows around. It's like that. It leaves a little trail behind. And again, I'm hoping that people come up with different ideas on what to do with that. One request I've had is a dark mode, like you get in Saabs and in aircraft, where basically all of the non-essential gauges go dark, and then they light up when you need them. So, for example, your tachometer could just be dim, but then as soon as the needle starts moving quickly, it lights up the backlighting so you can see what's going on. Or your speedometer, you could have it light up red whenever you go over 75 miles an hour, which I'm sure you're very concerned with. We could program that sort of thing in there. So, given that control, what can we do? That's really what it comes down to. Mike. Those are all the questions. All right. One thing that should be noted is this will not work behind factory gauge faces. You'll notice that I have a fairly ugly little gauge face on this. This is just a leftover one from a project that I built in the early 20th century. The important thing about it is that the masking's not very good, so I was able to let the LEDs show through it. The masking on factory gauges is very, very good. You can't see the LEDs at all. So you will have to get new gauge faces for any gauges that have the LEDs behind them. We are working with our friend Adam at Rev Limiter. He's going to be sending me some prototype gauges that will allow me to show this off with a different look. And he's going to be our go-to partner for doing gauges because he can do basically anything. So if you want to rotate things around, if you want to have in Klingon, whatever, Adam can take care of you that. We're not getting in the middle of that one. So that's just a short little, I'll go through the boot up sequence again, just because it's fun to see. Turn the speed off. So here we go. This is just a little show off to say, hey, look at the different stuff I can do. That blue is, well, I'm pretending the car is cold, so that's a blue red line to let you know that the car is cold. Don't rev it too high. Car's warming up right now. And then I've also got it programmed so that when the temperature starts getting higher, it starts giving you this little orange red line that says, okay, it's time to start short shifting, let the car relax, and then it says, whoa, overheat, and everything flashes red. Very short little demo there, but that's basically what, the sort of thing you can do. On my car, it warns me of oil pressure warnings. It warns me of temperature warnings. It's got oil. It's got a couple other temperature out of range warnings that does that. It takes over the gauges and just flashes at me and says, whoa, time to turn over and stop. So that's the sort of thing. I mean, once you have that control, it's the sort of thing you can do. Mike, do we have another question? There will be a question as soon as I start to sign off. I know there is. There always is. Okay, well, that's all I've got to show you here today. If you have any questions, please do put them in the comments. This is a product that's under active development. We'll release information on pricing and availability as soon as we know what it is. We don't know yet. We certainly are going to make it affordable. I certainly want to get this to market as soon as we can, and we're a good way along because we have some of those circuit board diagrams. We have some actual prototypes of the LEDs. So I think we're getting pretty close. So that's it. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe. YouTube, Facebook, wherever it is you're watching this. We're doing live videos every week on different topics. And of course, we have also all of our instructional videos, tech videos. We're trying to get you guys all sorts of good content so that you learn as much as possible with these cars. If you have comments, throw them in there. Like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. Anyway, my name is Keith Tanner from Flyin Miata, and we hope to see you again soon.